A child was outside in the cold. Her lips were blue. Her body was shaking so hard she could barely speak. She had been out there since 8 in the morning. It was now 6 in the evening. 10 hours. In 30-degree weather. No food. No coat. No explanation. Just, wait until your mother comes home. This was not an abandoned child. This was not a homeless woman. This was Zoe Morrison, age 5, outside the home she lived in. And this was Grace, her grandmother, who had moved in to take care of her. Both of them. Locked out of their own house. Inside the house that belonged to neither of them, a party was happening. Wine. Music. Expensive perfume. And a woman none of us had ever seen before, moving through Zoe's home like she had already redecorated it in her mind. And somewhere in the middle of all that warmth and laughter, was Zoe's father. He had come home at noon. He had seen them outside. He had gone inside anyway. The woman who stepped out of that car had been traveling for 2 weeks. Working. Providing. Trusting that the people she loved were safe inside the home she owned. Her name was Nadia Morrison. She was a working mother. And what she was about to find huddled behind the rose bushes, was the beginning of a war. But this is not a story about a woman who cried. This is a story about what happens when a working mother comes home to find that her family has been betrayed, and decides, very quietly, very deliberately, to burn it all down. By the time this story ends, a grandmother will testify. A mistress will flip. A mother-in-law will be arrested. A sister-in-law will be publicly destroyed by her own social media posts. And a man who thought he had planned everything, will be sleeping in his car. Stay with me. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Before we go inside that house, we need to understand whose house it actually was. Nadia bought it herself. Before Robert. Before the wedding. Before any of this. Her grandmother had left her a small inheritance, not a fortune, but enough, and Nadia had done what her grandmother always told her to do with money. She put it in something real. Her name. Only her name. On the deed. She was already a homeowner when she met Robert Morrison. Robert was magnetic. He had big plans and a smooth way of talking about them that made you believe they were already halfway real. He could paint a picture of the future so vivid that you almost forgot to ask what he had actually built so far. The answer, it turned out, was, not much. Robert worked part-time. Nadia worked full-time, then overtime, then traveled. Robert called her dedication to her career abandonment when it suited him. He called her income hours when it didn't. He was the kind of man who resented the hand that fed him, and spent years convincing himself the resentment was justified. When the travel schedule became a permanent fixture, Nadia's mother Grace moved in to help with Zoe. 73 years old. Still sharp. Still strong. Still the kind of woman who made breakfast before anyone else was awake. She read bedtime stories. She made every meal from scratch. She held that household together every time Nadia's work took her away. And Robert let her. He let Grace carry the weight. He accepted it as a given. And then, one day, he decided she was in the way. That shift didn't happen by accident. It was manufactured. By a woman named Patricia Morrison. Robert's mother. Patricia had always had opinions about Nadia. Too independent. Too career-driven. Too gone, too much. In Patricia's world, a wife stayed home. A wife made herself available. A wife didn't travel for work and expect the world to keep spinning without her. She never said this directly to Nadia. She didn't have to. She waited. She found Tiffany Reynolds through a friend at her church. Younger. Long hair. No college degree, but a family with money, and in Patricia's calculus, that balanced out. She introduced them. Carefully. Deliberately. The way you introduce people when you already know the outcome you're engineering. And here is what none of them had checked. Not Robert. Not Patricia. Not Tiffany. The house they were quietly planning to take, the house they were already redecorating in their minds, was never Robert's to give. It had never been his. Not for a single day of their marriage. And the woman they were planning to remove from it, was about to come home early. Nadia had cut her trip short by 2 days. Not because anything felt wrong. Because she missed her daughter. She wanted to see Zoe's face when she walked through the door. She wanted to surprise them. The porch light was off. She tried to remember if she had mentioned the trip getting cut short. She hadn't. She wanted it to be a surprise. Through the frosted windows, warm amber light. Figures moving. Music. Someone was having a good time inside. But it was so quiet on the porch. She fumbled with her keys. And then, she heard it. A whimper. From the side of the house. Behind the rose bushes. She didn't scream. She didn't run. She moved toward them the way mothers move when something primal inside them says go, fast and quiet and absolute. Baby. Look at me. Mommy. The child's skin was ice. Not just cold, ice. The kind of cold that takes hours. Mama Grace. How long? Since this morning. They said we couldn't come back in until you got home. Something broke inside Nadia's chest in that moment. But it wasn't her heart. Her heart would break later, in the quiet of the night, when her daughter was finally warm and asleep. What broke first, in that exact second, was her patience. Her willingness to give people the benefit of the doubt. Her habit of choosing peace over justice. Gone. Permanently. Nadia told Zoe to go upstairs and run a warm bath for herself and Grandma Grace. Quietly. Calmly. Like she was asking her to get ready for a normal Tuesday night. She waited until she heard the water running. Then she turned back to the room. The warmth had hit her face like a slap when she walked in. The house smelled like expensive perfume and wine and someone else's evening. And in the living room of the home she had bought with her grandmother's inheritance, Patricia was sitting on her couch like a queen. Monica, Robert's sister, was sprawled in Nadia's favorite chair, scrolling her phone without looking up. And descending Nadia's staircase, in a red dress that clearly cost more than Zoe's school supplies, was a woman Nadia had never seen before. She moved through that house like she had already measured the curtains. Patricia looked up at Nadia. Not guilty. Not ashamed. Just, mildly irritated. Oh. You're back early. Not, are you okay? Not, I'm sorry, let me explain. Just, you're back early. As if Nadia were the intrusion. In her own home. Nadia looked around her living room. 6 people. In a house that could comfortably hold 20. She said, quietly, this is my house. Why was my family locked outside? We didn't lock anyone out. We just told them to wait outside until there was more room. More room. Nadia asked where Robert was. And the woman in the red dress smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of someone who believed the game was already over and they had already won. He's upstairs getting dressed. We're all going out for dinner. And then Robert descended the staircase. New suit. New haircut. A man who had redesigned himself on money that wasn't his. He saw Nadia. His face shifted, not guilt, not exactly. Something more like calculation. He was already working out his next move. And that is the moment it became clear. All of it. At once. This was not a visit that had gotten out of hand. This was not an overstep by well-meaning family. This was the plan. The new life, already installed inside the old one. Wearing her furniture. Sleeping in her bed. Eating her food. While her daughter froze outside. I want all of you out of my house. Now wait just a. Out. You have 10 minutes before I call the police. You can't kick us out. Robert. Robert doesn't own this house. I do. The deed has my name on it. His name has never been on it. Not once. 10 minutes. The room went still. Patricia and Monica exchanged a glance. Tiffany's smile faltered for the first time. Nadia, this is my house too. No. It's not. For the first time all night, the room went completely quiet. Everyone looked at Nadia. Really looked at her. And something in her expression made them all take one small step back. They left. All of them. And Nadia made hot chocolate. Hands steady. Breathing even. Eyes clear. She carried it upstairs and sat on the edge of the bathtub while Zoe splashed in warm water and finally, smiled. Mommy. Are they gone? Yes, baby. They're gone. And they're never coming back. That night, watching her daughter play, Nadia made a decision. Not an angry decision. A cold one. Robert and his family had spent months planning her removal. She would spend the next few months returning the favor. But first, she needed to know everything. Grace had never been a woman who complained. She had spent 73 years absorbing difficulty without comment, smoothing things over, keeping the peace for everyone else's sake. But when Nadia sat across from her and said, "Mama Grace." My daughter's lips were blue. "Please. Tell me everything," Grace told her. It had started the day after Nadia boarded her flight. Patricia arrived with Tiffany and declared herself at home. She told Grace she was cooking wrong. Cleaning wrong. Raising Zoe wrong. She said, and I want you to hear this, she said that Robert was tired of having to support his wife's family. She said this in front of Zoe. A 5-year-old child. Who then turned to her grandmother and asked, "Grandma, why doesn't Daddy's mommy like us?" Monica pushed Grace once in the kitchen. Told her she was moving too slowly. Patricia grabbed Zoe's arm hard enough to leave finger marks that lasted 3 days. And the morning before Nadia arrived home, their final, most brazen act, Patricia told Grace and Zoe that the house was too full for the party they were hosting. And that they needed to wait outside. 8 in the morning. And Robert came home at noon. He pulled into his own driveway. He saw his mother-in-law and his 5-year-old daughter standing outside in the cold. He saw them. Tiffany came out onto the porch and kissed him there, right there, in front of Grace and Zoe, and said, "Isn't it nice to finally have the house to ourselves?" And Robert looked at his daughter. And went inside. Grace finished. Nadia finished her coffee. Closed the notepad. And picked up the phone. The locksmith arrived within the hour. The bank received her call next, Robert's access to every account, removed. The credit card companies, every card connected to his name, cancelled. Then she called Thomas Wright, the attorney who had handled the house purchase years ago, the man who had seen the deed and knew exactly whose name was on it. "I need to file for divorce," she told him. "I need full custody of my daughter. And I need you to be aggressive." He said, "Tell me everything." She did. When she finished, Thomas was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Nadia. What they did to your mother and daughter, that's not just grounds for divorce. What you're describing is child endangerment. Elder abuse. Criminal charges. Are you prepared for that?" "I'm prepared for everything." But before Thomas Wright filed a single document, before a single charge was drawn up, Nadia opened Robert's email. He hadn't changed the password. It hadn't occurred to him to. He had never once imagined she would look. What she found in that inbox was not just evidence of an affair. It was a blueprint. A year-long, documented, meticulously planned blueprint for stealing her life. And it was written in their own words. Month after month. Patricia to Robert. Robert to Tiffany. Monica coaching Robert on how to move money before the divorce. They had thought of almost everything. Almost. One email, from Patricia to Robert, sent on a Tuesday afternoon, 4 months before Nadia came home early, stopped Nadia cold. It read, "Make sure you document every time Nadia travels for work. We can use it to prove she's an unfit mother who abandons her child. With your mother and sister as witnesses, we can get full custody of Zoe and child support payments. Tiffany will be a much better mother anyway." They had planned to take her daughter. Not because they loved Zoe. Because they wanted the child support payments that would come with full custody. Zoe was not a child to them. She was a financial instrument. Nadia printed every email. She forwarded everything to herself before Robert could think to delete it. Then she opened the bank statements. And the number she found, 6 months of transfers to Tiffany Reynolds' account, made something in her chest go very, very still. $15,000. Zoe's college fund. Grace's medical expenses. Gone. Their joint savings, which should have held $20,000, had less than $3,000 remaining. But here is where Robert's plan began to collapse under its own weight. He had assumed, for their entire marriage, that the house was in both their names. He had never checked the deed. Nadia had bought it before the wedding. Her money. Her name. Only her name. Always. The car he drove. Leased in her name. His credit cards. Attached to her accounts. The savings he'd been draining. Money she had earned. Robert had been living inside Nadia's financial structure for years, and had spent the last 6 months dismantling it to fund a life he planned to live without her. And legally, he had almost no claim to any of it. The private investigator she hired confirmed everything within 48 hours. Robert and Tiffany were staying in room 412 at the downtown Marriott. On whose credit card? Patricia's. Which is when the picture became complete. Patricia was not just an interfering mother-in-law. She was the architect. She had planned this. Funded this. Introduced the players and written the script. And she had made one devastating mistake. She had put it all in writing. Nadia found Monica's Facebook post on her third morning home. 3 weeks before Nadia came home early, Monica, Patricia, and Tiffany, at a restaurant together, celebrating. The caption, Robert picked a winner this time. 57 comments. 57 people who had celebrated the plan. 57 people who had congratulated Robert on his upgrade. Nadia read every comment. She screenshot every face. She noted every name. And then she composed an email. Subject line, the truth about Robert Morrison's upgrade. She attached the bank statements. The emails. The photographs. And she sent it to all 57. At once. By 7 the next morning, her phone would not stop. Messages from strangers she had never met, people who had received the email, people who were horrified, people who were sorry, people who said they had always had a bad feeling. A few defended Robert. Those messages, Nadia read carefully. Because the ones who defended him had just told her exactly where he would find support. And Thomas Wright would need to know. While Nadia was building her case, piece by piece, document by document, the world around Robert was beginning to crack. His employer had been asking questions about his attendance. He had been calling in sick on the days he spent with Tiffany. Days that were now documented in the private investigator's report. Days that matched the hotel receipts. Days that matched the credit card statements. Patricia's employer had begun noticing discrepancies in the books. $5,000. Over 6 months. From a woman who worked as a bookkeeper. Same timeline. Same pattern. Same beneficiary. Patricia had been stealing from her job to fund her son's affair. And Monica, furious, panicked, stupid with anger, had done something remarkable. She had created a fake social media account. To post lies about Nadia. From her home IP address. Using the same phone as her real accounts. Defamation. Harassment. Premeditation, documented in Monica's own digital fingerprints. She had walked straight into the trap. Except there was no trap. Monica had done this entirely to herself. Which, Nadia would later reflect, was the most fitting justice of all. If this story is speaking to something you've lived through, leave a comment below, I read every one. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it. Because sometimes the most important stories are the ones we share with the people we love before it's too late. She came alone. No Robert. No Patricia. No backup. Just Tiffany Reynolds standing on the porch of the house she had once walked through like she owned it, looking like she would rather be anywhere else in the world. Nadia opened the door. Did not invite her in. Waited. I want you to know, I didn't know about your mother and daughter being locked outside. You were there. I was upstairs. I didn't know. Even if I believe that, which I don't, you were still sleeping with a married man and helping displace a family. What do you want, Tiffany? Something genuine cracked through Tiffany's composure. Robert told me you two were already separated. He said you didn't love him anymore. He said the marriage was already over. We were never separated. I never said I didn't love him. I was working. To pay our bills. While he was with you. Patricia keeps telling me I'm not good enough for him anyway. That I don't have a college degree. She introduces me to people and then whispers things about me when she thinks I can't hear. And Robert actually told me yesterday that if I wasn't so expensive, none of this would have happened. So. The family was already turning on their chosen replacement. Tiffany had served her purpose, she had been the weapon used to destabilize Nadia's marriage, and now that the plan was in legal jeopardy, they were folding her into the collateral damage. Why are you really here? Because I'm scared. Robert keeps talking about custody. But he doesn't even like children. He complains about Zoe constantly. Patricia keeps talking about child support like it's a salary. Like Zoe is. She stopped. Like Zoe is a paycheck. Tiffany looked at her. And nodded. Nadia opened the door wider. Stepped aside. The two women sitting across from each other for the first time without pretense or agenda. Nadia laid it out clearly. The stolen money. The identity of every dollar in the jewelry box Tiffany was still clutching. The emails about Zoe. The criminal exposure Tiffany herself faced as the recipient of stolen goods. And then she made an offer. Tell the truth in court, under oath. Return the jewelry. In exchange, I won't press charges against you. They'll hate me forever. They already don't respect you. After this comes out, they'll blame you anyway. You might as well be on the right side. Tiffany looked down at the jewelry box. Then up at Nadia. She nodded. And Nadia called Thomas Wright. I think we just got our star witness. 2 weeks after filing, they walked into that courthouse. Thomas Wright had prepared Nadia well. She knew the evidence. She knew the strategy. She knew every counterargument Robert's lawyer would attempt. Robert arrived with a young attorney in an expensive suit, underprepared and clearly wishing he had read the file more carefully. Patricia and Monica flanked him. Both dressed for church. Both performing respectability they had not earned. Tiffany was nowhere in the room. Judge Sarah Coleman had reviewed the evidence beforehand. She called them to order. And before Robert's lawyer could speak his first sentence about custody or asset division, she stopped him. Before we discuss anything else, I want to address the allegation that a 5-year-old child was locked outside in 30-degree weather for 10 hours. Mr. Peterson, your client will explain to me exactly what happened that day. Robert claimed it was a misunderstanding. That Grace and Zoe had chosen to wait outside. That no one had forced them. That it was all being exaggerated. Thomas Wright stood up. Your Honor. We have photographic evidence of the child's condition when Mrs. Morrison arrived. Medical documentation of cold exposure. And witness testimony. From whom? Miss Tiffany Reynolds. Who was present during the incident and has agreed to cooperate fully with this investigation. Robert. The color leaving his face. Patricia's hand gripping Monica's arm. The woman in the red dress. His Tiffany. His future. Was testifying against him. Your Honor, we are also pursuing criminal charges against Mrs. Patricia Morrison for embezzlement from her employer, funds used to finance her son's extramarital affair. We have 6 months of financial records, email documentation of the plan, and social media posts confirming premeditation. That is an absolute lie. Ma'am. Sit down. Or I will have you removed. This is your only warning. Patricia sat. Monica's face, the first real fear. Judge Coleman reviewed the evidence in complete silence. Everyone in the room waited. When she looked up, her expression could have stopped a clock. Mr. Morrison, based on the evidence before this court, I am granting Mrs. Morrison temporary full custody of the minor child, with no unsupervised visitation until further review. Mrs. Morrison retains exclusive use of the marital home and all vehicles. Mr. Morrison, you have 24 hours to collect personal belongings, under police supervision. All marital assets are hereby frozen pending full investigation of the financial theft allegations. Your Honor, where am I supposed to live? That is not this court's concern. You should have considered that before you stole from your wife to fund an affair. Adjourned. Patricia was screaming at Robert in the parking lot. Robert screaming back. The plan, a year in the building, publicly, completely, catastrophically undone in 45 minutes. As Nadia and Thomas Wright walked to their car, they could still hear Patricia behind them. How could you be so stupid? She was supposed to be on our side. Thomas turned to Nadia with a quiet smile. That went better than expected. Over the following weeks, the architecture of Robert's plan came apart column by column. Patricia was fired when her employer discovered the full extent of the embezzlement. They pressed charges the same day. Monica's fake social media harassment was traced within hours by Nadia's investigator, home IP address, same phone, same writing patterns as her real accounts. Defamation. Harassment. Premeditation documented in her own digital handwriting. Robert lost his job. Too many absences. Too many phone calls from lawyers taken in the parking lot. Too many days he simply didn't show up. And Tiffany, who had been the centerpiece of the plan, the chosen replacement, the woman Patricia had selected from her church directory like an item from a catalog, called Nadia one last time. Robert came to my apartment last night. Begging me to take him back. Said he loved me. Said it was all a misunderstanding. What did you tell him? I told him I was seeing someone new. Someone who has a job. Someone who's never been married. Someone who has never once handed me something and made me wonder later whose money paid for it. Robert Morrison was now unemployed, broke, and abandoned by every person who had helped build the plan. He moved into a cheap motel. Then, when the motel money ran out, his car. Then one afternoon at the farmer's market, sunlight, Nadia, Zoe, and Grace walking through stalls, Zoe spotted him first. She stopped walking. Studied him from a distance. A man on a bench near the bus station. A backpack beside him containing everything he had. Is that Daddy? Yes, sweetheart. He looks sad. Yes. He does. Should we help him? Nadia knelt to Zoe's level. The two of them eye to eye. What do you think? Zoe thought carefully. Then, I think he made bad choices. And now he has to fix them himself. 6 years old. And she had already learned the lesson it takes most people a lifetime to reach. Robert's lawyer reached out to settle 3 months after that first hearing. They were offering everything. Full custody of Zoe to Nadia. The house, which had always been hers. All marital assets. Monthly alimony for 5 years. Robert responsible for all legal fees. In exchange, Nadia would not pursue the full criminal charges. That evening, Nadia sat on the porch and asked her mother a question. Do you think I should take it? That depends on what you want. Revenge, or peace. Because those are different things. What's the difference? Revenge means sending Robert to prison and making sure he loses everything forever. Peace means taking what you're owed, and moving forward. And what's best for Zoe is a mother who is free. Not one who is still fighting this fight 5 years from now. Zoe was laughing in the yard, catching fireflies, completely free. The next morning, Nadia called Thomas Wright. I'll take the settlement. But I have conditions. She wanted Robert to sign a written admission. Everything. The affair. The money. What he allowed his family to do to Grace and Zoe. All of it, documented, legally binding, on the record. Because if he ever tries to say he was the victim, she told Thomas, if he ever tries to turn Zoe against me when she's older, I want proof of what really happened. She also wanted Patricia and Monica permanently barred from any contact with Zoe. And Robert would fund family therapy for Zoe and Grace. Both conditions were added to the agreement. The day he signed, Robert tried to speak to her outside. You didn't have to destroy my whole life. Nadia stopped. Turned. Not angry. Not triumphant. Just clear. Robert. I didn't destroy your life. You destroyed it the day you decided your family was less valuable than your plan. The house was mine before we married. The savings was money I earned. The cars were in my name. You never owned any of it. But Grace and Zoe, they trusted you. And you looked at your daughter in the cold and went inside. You don't get to ask me to feel sorry for the consequences of that choice. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, the final chapter wrote itself. Robert had been using Nadia's social security number to open new credit accounts. $8,000. 3 cards. Identity theft. A felony. Up to 10 years. When they traced it back, Patricia's hands were on it. Monica's address had been used for the cards. The whole family. Together until the very end. Robert was sentenced to 8 years. Patricia, 18 months plus 2 additional years for the conspiracy. Monica, financial ruin, permanent restraining order, unemployable in their city. And Tiffany? Tiffany finished nursing school. Married someone kind. Was expecting her first child. She sent Nadia a brief email. I wanted to thank you for showing me what real strength looks like. You taught me I deserved better. I hope you and your family are blessed. Nadia replied in one sentence. Congratulations. I'm glad you found it. 2 years after the divorce was finalized, Nadia stood in her backyard wearing a simple white dress. Marcus Hamilton stood across from her, a pediatrician she had met at a community health fair, a man who had asked Grace's permission before proposing, a man who had made Zoe laugh so hard she fell off the couch the third time they met. He said his vows and looked at her the way she had always deserved to be looked at. I promise to love and protect not just you, but the family you built with such courage and grace. I promise to be the father Zoe deserves. And the son Grace has always wanted. Grace sat in the front row. Happy tears. Zoe beaming, holding the rings with both hands like they were the most important objects in the world. When it was Nadia's turn, she looked out at the small gathering, people who had loved her through all of it, and said, I promise to love you with the same fierce determination I used to protect my family. I promise to build a life with you based on honesty, respect, and joy. That night, when everyone had gone home and Zoe was asleep and the house was quiet, Nadia stepped out onto her back porch. The air was warm. Grace's flowers were in bloom. She stood there and thought about where she had been 2 years before. Married to a man who was planning to replace her. Supporting a family that despised her. Working constantly to pay for a life built entirely on lies. She thought about the moment she found Zoe and Grace in the cold. About the thing that had broken in her chest in that moment, not her heart, but her willingness to be taken advantage of. And she understood something she hadn't been able to name until now. Robert and his family had tried to steal her life. They had given her a better one instead. Sometimes, the best thing that can happen to you is having people show you exactly who they are. Because once you know the truth, you stop wasting time on those who don't deserve you. And you start building a life with the ones who do. Nadia turned off the porch light. Went inside. The door closed softly. The house glowed warm in the dark. I want to sit with you in this for just a moment before we close. Because this story raises questions that don't have easy answers. When Nadia found her daughter blue in the cold, she had a choice. She could have pleaded. She could have begged Robert to explain. She could have tried to hold the marriage together despite everything she had just seen. Instead, she made hot chocolate. She put Zoe to bed. And then she started building a case. I want to ask you, was she right to go as far as she did? Or was there a moment where she crossed a line? And here's the one that keeps me thinking, when Grace asked her whether she wanted revenge or peace, and Nadia chose peace, do you think she actually chose peace? Or was the settlement itself a form of revenge, just quieter? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And this is the moment I always ask, what would you have done? If you walked up to your own house and found your child shivering in the dark, what would your first move have been? And before you go, who do you think was the most dangerous person in this story? Robert, Patricia, or Monica? Drop your answer in the comments below. If this video gave you something, a thought, a feeling, a conversation you need to have, tap the like button so more people can find it. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. Because every week we bring you stories that live at the edge of justice. And the next one. A woman comes home from surgery to find that her mother-in-law has given away everything she owns. The furniture. The photographs. The irreplaceable things. All of it, gone. And what she does over the next 90 days is the most patient, precise, and devastating act of justice I have ever had the privilege of telling. Subscribe. Ring the bell. Come back for that one. Because some stories, you can't afford to miss. Take care of yourselves. Take care of the people you love. And I'll see you in the next one.